A huge thank you to our Shark Tank competition innovation sponsor, UCB. So round of applause to UCB for sponsoring Shark Tank and being a supporter of our innovation sponsor this year. All right, and now we are going to start the competition. So before we get to this year's competition, we wanted to bring you back a little bit into the past. You heard about the epilepsy chatbot today. We actually put this into ChatGPT because we always try to use some fun shark puns, and this is just kind of to show you that even ChatGPT kind of understands dad jokes. So I also wanted to take a moment and thank our other sponsors of the 2024 Shark Tank. You heard earlier Tom Stanton's story with the Danny Did Foundation, and we'd really like to say thank you to the Danny Did Foundation for supporting our ecosystem. Yeah. I also really want to say a special thank you to John Lees and the entire Lees family for their generous contribution to this year's Shark Tank Award. Thank you. So the objective of the Shark Tank competition is really to help understand and bring to the forefront patient needs as it relates to care, diagnosis, and effective and safe treatments. And we always like to say we bring these tools to patients in a time frame that matters. And this, as you've seen here today, from all of the different programs that are still in existence that have been funded through the Shark Tank mechanism, we are really proud that we have accomplished a lot of those objectives. So I wanted to take just a quick moment, and actually we can breeze right through this because you guys kind of did my work for me today. The competition began in 2011, so we're now in our 13th year of Shark Tank, with thanks to the Epilepsy Therapy Project and all of those who founded the Therapy Project and made Shark Tank possible. We've given away over $2 million in funding to many of you who have participated in the meeting today. We have funded a total of 24 projects, and 17 of those 24 are still around today, are still active, and are still in development. And we, understand the journey of the startup, and we're really proud that we have been able to support a lot of you to continue your development and become successful. I also wanted to just plug that we don't always just fund commercial projects. So a couple years ago, we funded the Smart app, which was designed for self-management and resilience for adolescents in Uganda with Dr. Kolte's team. And they have actually gone on to receive additional funding from UCB as well as the NIH for continued use of their app, which was an amazing accomplishment and just a testament that some of the other projects that we fund are meant to do good in the world, and in addition to creating the projects for all of you. So where are they now? I put this up and then everyone kind of shouted us out anyway, but we had several different groups present here today: SAMI, Epiminder, Empatica, Zito, UNEEG, and EYES. And I really just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you for acknowledging the Epilepsy Foundation's role in your successes. And we asked the question, where are they not now? And I actually had this map, which is of where we are. And so it might look like a hurricane pathway, but it's actually our location currently. And it's a testament that all of you are still here and presenting all of the data and clinical research that you've done to date. So thank you so much for that. Yeah. All right, and now we're going to bring up our 2023 winners to give a quick update on what they've been up to with the funding since last year. So I will invite the Brain Capture team to the stage.
Hi, I'm Paul Loomis. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer and a co-founder at Brain Capture. So Brain Capture is a Danish MedTech startup. We were founded in 2020, and our goal was to close the epilepsy diagnosis and treatment gap. And we wanted to do that by making EEG recordings available in any clinical setting. This epilepsy diagnosis and treatment gap is a significant problem. In fact, most people alive today with epilepsy have never been diagnosed and have never been treated. Most of them live in low and middle income countries. There's a lot of reasons for this, but it kind of boils down to not enough neurologists in most of the world. In this room, there are enough neurologists, actually, but broadly no. And the fact that we've designed EEG to be used only in an expert setting. Those two things together mean that most people are never going to access the care that they need, and that's a big problem. So this is our solution, which is now CE marked and commercializing. So we re-engineered the EEG diagnostic for scale and deployability, with the idea of making EEG usable, making it go where patients need it. This starts with a portable battery-powered 32-channel amplifier with signal quality on par with other EEG solutions. So truly clinical grade clinical grade signal quality. And then this connects by Bluetooth to an app on a smartphone. So we use the smartphone as a portal into the EEG diagnostic, which really, again, increases the usability and the scalability of the diagnostic. So it automates the steps of the routine EEG exam and makes it possible for a non-expert user, like a nurse, to take a high-quality routine recording after a short training. That app, of course, uploads to a cloud that allows remote review and reporting of EEG by experts. And we use an electrode cap to place the electrodes correctly, consistently when it's used by non-experts. We had the opportunity to come to Miami last year and pitch in the Shark Tank, and it was fantastic. This is when we were pre-commercial, still an idea, developing, et cetera. We managed to win, and the recognition that we got has really propelled us and helped us to have an incredible past year or so. So after the Shark Tank, we sort of did our first commercialization in a pilot market, which is Kenya. Kenya has a lot of need for the EEG diagnostic, and we also figured that if we could make it work there, we could make it work anywhere. And by the end of last year, we were deploying into our first customers in Kenya. So we had 7 by the end of the year, mostly large hospitals who struggle to deploy EEG because there are maybe a couple dozen neurologists in Kenya and maybe a couple dozen people who know how to operate a traditional device, and those are also really expensive, of course. So in the first 6 months, these first clients did around 350 EEG recordings. These were all done by nurses, clinical officers, non-experts who we trained in one-day trainings. And they managed to do really high-quality recordings. The vast majority of these were of diagnostic quality. Mostly the ones that weren't were because they didn't record long enough. So we ended up implementing an app update that makes sure that we get a good 30-minute recording, and that has helped a lot. But we noted abnormalities in about 30% of cases in this initial group of patients. That's similar to what you'd expect in other routine settings, so we know that we are catching routine EEGs. Now, just in this deployment, we roughly doubled the EEG diagnostic capacity of Kenya in 8 or 9 months with 15 devices. Obviously, that's not a large number, but it's a large percentage increase, and if we can replicate that in other markets, then we'd be on a good track. This year has also been quite eventful for us. We got the CE approval in January. That allowed us to start pilots with the Emirates and with the Rwandan governments, both of which are now tendering for our solution. Then in July, we signed a number of distribution agreements that cover a lot of markets in South and Southeast Asia that have a great need for our device. They have many neurologists, but they still struggle to deploy for geographic or for clinical reasons. It's just hard to get EEG where it belongs and to all the people who need it. So that's around 2 billion people in those markets. And we now have an order book of hundreds of units to fill over the next year or so already. And later this year, we anticipate approval in those markets. We're registering now with our distributors. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. We also have just raised a funding round, and we published a paper on the usability of our system with Shandor Benitsky, an epileptologist, European epileptologist. I encourage you all to check out. It's a good validation. So what have we learned in the past year, and where are we heading? Well, thanks to this win last year in the Shark Tank, we actually did use this money to fund production of some of our first devices that went to Kenya, and that gave us really strong clinical evidence and demonstrated relevance in a market where our use case is important to customers. So obviously this has allowed us to take some of those learnings and expand in Asia. That's really where we're focused for the next few months, but also other regions are important to us. And in the next year, we're looking at the Middle East, Latin America. We've actually just this week made our first sale into a European market. It turns out that when you sort of take EEG and try to make it as accessible, as usable as possible, then you solve a lot of problems, not just ones that are limited to low and middle income countries. So we are also planning an FDA filing in 2026. We've got a few development things happening as well, long-term recordings, other tools in the cloud, reading and automations, the things that you would expect. Yeah, I guess my ask here is we are looking for collaborators, of course. If you care about access to EEG, we want to work with you. And then obviously, we're always fundraising. But thank you so much. And yeah, any questions, welcome.
Thank you. A quick question or two? All right, well, in the interest of time then, we'll keep moving. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. All right, I now invite the Prosthesis team to the stage to talk about an update on the EZ project.
So thank you very much for having us here. I'm Michael Tittelbach, CTO of Prosthesis, and I'm here on behalf of our founder and longstanding CEO, Angela Liedler, who just decided to step back this year. And it's hard to fill their footsteps, so we are two today to do that. I'm Michael, I'm the CTO. And I give you an update on the technology, so if you not remember.
Oh, we gotta go forward.
It's the wrong direction.
The big green one.
The big green one.
Yes.
That's better. So that is the EZ system. That's what we developed in the last 9 years. And the idea is to stimulate the cortex through the cranium without opening it. So it's minimally invasive. And we have the opportunity to use this electrode that you can see there to place it directly above the epileptic focus and treat drug-resistant focal epilepsy patients with that device. So today, this device is CE marked. It's commercialized in several countries in Europe, and we are continuing on the commercial pathway. At the same time, this is one of the first times to see the long-term data we have out of our CE mark trials, which were 33 patients, and after 6 months, we already saw that there's quite some good effect to see, but after 2 years now, we see that we are in the same league as other stimulation methods like RNS from neuropace. So we reach a great value for responder rate, which goes up to 65%, while seizure median reduction goes down to minus almost 60%. So based on that, we continue commercialization, and we also address the US market, obviously. That's our clinical program, how it looks today. So there is the studies we already did. And above that, there's a study to broaden the indication in Europe to children, 12 years and older. That's the Easy for You, like Easy for Youth. Then there is an ID trial upcoming, and Carl will tell more about that. And we have 3 different registries running in Europe to collect more data, since clinical data is something we need urgently to improve our commercialization program. So with that, I give over to Carl.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you so much for having us to provide this update. My name's Carl Stocklosa. I'm the new CEO for Precisis. As Michael said, Angela is retiring. She's not leaving us. She's going to be joining our board and be a long-term advisor for us, which we truly appreciate. I'm going to talk about what we use the money for. So when we presented last year, when Angela presented last year, we were really focused on how we would go about funding the IDE trial for the United States. And you can see there's a number of different elements here. One of those is being biocompatibility. It's an implantable device. There's study fees. There's also planning and so on. And so we use that money to take care of some of those costs. And I'll highlight two in particular. The IDE submissions with the FDA, so we did a number of pre-subs and we had some consultation on the development of our clinical trial. And then the other aspect is the development or the submission for Category 3 CPT codes. And that, we're happy to say, was actually successful 2 weeks ago in the Arizona meeting. So we will now have Category 3 CPT codes for use in the clinical trial when it starts. Here is the protocol for the trial. It has a baseline period followed by implantation and then a recovery period of 1 month. There will be a look at the severe adverse events from the surgical procedure side, and that will occur, and that's a safety endpoint. And then you have two arms. You have the stimulation on and then the sham arm, and they will run for 6 months, and then after 6 months, the sham arm will be turned on. And so then they will go out to 12 months. So this is the design of the study. And we're really looking forward to our final discussions with the FDA and submitting this early next year. This is our current timeline for the study and for our approval. And we are right now in that phase here where we're doing the submission, and we're actually looking to bring on centers to support the clinical study. And so that's really our ask here, is we are looking for folks to join us in this journey and to become part of the Precisis team and help us conduct a very strong and high quality data-driven study. So with that, we thank you very much, and we'll move on if there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Please join me in a round of applause.
Yeah.
So great progress from both of our groups. We are going to move now to the introduction and Shark Tank rules, which is going to be Jackie French, and I'll turn it over to her. Thank you.
So the moment you've all been waiting for, the Shark Tank. So welcome, and I'm going to give you a little introduction and give you some rules, and then we're going to go right into it. So let's see, where's my big green button? Okay, so the rules are that each finalist has, and I'm talking to you guys, 5 minutes to present, 5 minutes of question and answer from the sharks, very sharky questions and answers. And then each shark will select one finalist. So every shark, and the numbers are a little wrong here, so listen to me, don't look at the numbers there. But every shark walks in here with $25,000 in their pocket. And the audience also has $75,000 in their pocket. Now, yay, audience. We're going to get to that in a minute. You, the audience, will have to do what you need to do in order to spend that money. But that is a total of $200,000. And the rules are that after they hear everything that you guys have to say, after you've answered all their questions, they're going to tell us who they want to vote for. And even though each of them has $25,000 in their pocket, the rules are that there are no loan sharks here. So that means that if only one person is going to vote for you, you can't get their money. They have to either convince somebody else to go with them, or they will have to go with the crowd. So that's when things get fun around here in the tank. So at the end, there can either be only one winner or two winners if you could do the math. So it either is 3 sharks and 2 sharks, or all 5 sharks are going to go for the same proposal. And then the audience is going to vote, and the audience will give their $75,000, and that's when we know how it ends up. Next slide. Oh, next slide. All of you have the app. You cannot vote unless you have downloaded the app. You cannot vote unless you have downloaded the app and you are also logged into your app. I have been told that although there are like 240 people who have downloaded the app, there's only about 150 that are logged in. So if you want to vote and you want to have your vote count, then you will log into the app. You can vote for anybody whenever you want, but the last vote that you register is going to be the vote that counts. So when the vote closes, the last one you registered will be the vote that counts. And with no further ado, can I ask the sharks to come up?
Waking up to ash and dust. I wipe my brow and I sweat my rust.
I just felt a chill. All right. So I will ask each of you in turn to stand up, turn around, show your shark name. You know, they hide their shark names until, you know, you make them show them. And why is that your shark name? And I'll start right at the end of the row. Dr. Hickson, can you show us your shark name?
I don't think you can see it because my fin. But it's a Skepta-shark.
And why are you Skepta-shark?
So I've spent most of my career in academia. I'm an epileptologist, and about 5 years ago, I stepped into, many of you know, kind of the biotech startup, digital health side of the equation. So this isn't my first rodeo in terms of looking at new technologies and innovations, and I always tell folks that I'm a skeptical believer, which means that I believe that there are a lot of innovative solutions to the problems that we've been discussing that are coming forward, but at the same time, we have to be very skeptical, or at least I'm very skeptical, about appraising the first iterations of those technologies. So that's the background.
All
My
right.
daughters thought I should be Disco Shark, just FYI.
And the next one along, you've already met our CEO, Bernice Martin-Lee. Turn around. And why are you the impact shark?
I am Impact Shark because what I'm looking for are devices that are going to come to market that are going to be accessible for all and make true impact in our 3.4 million people that need help at a time frame that matters.
Thank you. And next along is a member of our PAB, Sasha Alec Lindstrom. Turn around, display your shark name.
I am the megalodon shark.
And can you explain why you are the megalodon shark?
I too am an epileptologist, neurophysiologist, and I spend most of my time doing magnetoencephalography. So whenever the Meg movies came out, it was a big thing. And I was like, okay. They're not around anymore, but.
Perfect. And Bob Smith, I don't know if we can see your name.
Yeah, I think I also have the.
I can't tell whether that's. Can't tell whether it's an angel's wing or a shark fin.
So I
Okay.
am Papa Shark, and I'm Papa Shark because my son Andy, I'm his papa, and he is the one who has epilepsy. And 7 years ago had surgery and is seizure free, and also is in about a week and a half he's going to become a papa. So I guess I'll be grandpapa.
You forgot the most important thing. You're also papa to a previous shark.
Yeah, Andy was a shark, that's true. Papa to a shark.
So you're a papa shark as
And
well.
he knows venture a lot better than me, so I'm sure he did well.
And lastly, but certainly not leastly, Wasim, can you please show us your name?
I'm the wonderful shark.
Do you mean you're Mr. Wonderful?
Mr. Wonderful. You've all seen Shark Tank on TV. You all know how Mr. Wonderful is. Expect some tough love tonight.
All right, very good. So with no further ado, we will go in the order on the program, and I would like to, and remember, 5 minutes, and I will be Sharky and cut you off. So you got 5 minutes. So we're gonna invite LAMPSY up to give us a start. And say when you're ready to start the clock.
Okay, I'm ready. So thank you all for being here and for the Epilepsy Foundation. My name is Vincent. I'm here to present LAMPSY. The unpredictability of seizures can take a toll on families, especially when compounded with the fear of SUDEP. Nocturnal and clonic seizures are especially dangerous in this regard, yet 86% of nocturnal seizures go unnoticed, leaving families in a perpetual state of anxiety and uncertainty. And a big factor that can exacerbate this anxiety that is not often talked about is social stigma. Around half of people with epilepsy experience social stigma and discrimination, which really restricts what solutions to these problems they can or want to use. These people are the reason we developed LAMPSY. Using privacy-preserving video, LAMPSY detects tonic-clonic seizures in real time and immediately alerts caregivers or emergency contacts. LAMPSY will also help users share videos with doctors, helping them more closely monitor their condition. And in case you're wondering, no, I'm not here on behalf of IKEA. Discreetly integrated into the user's home, LAMPSY remains invisible and avoids exposing the user to stigma. And that's one reason why LAMPSY can deliver for people with epilepsy where many alternatives just can't. Alternatives still use visible, uncomfortable, or invasive devices, neglecting the fact that usability is key. People with epilepsy want something discreet and comfortable that doesn't subject them to stigma or remind them of their condition every day. They want something that doesn't require all types of maintenance, that helps them return to a sense of control and normality, instead of stressing them out about battery life or skin irritation or whether the device is working properly or not. Something that stays in the background and off the person. That's LAMPSY, the first truly invisible seizure detection device. In our testing, LAMPSY is also shown to be significantly more accurate than other devices. So let me clue you in about how LAMPSY detects seizures and a bit of the science behind it. This is something like what a regular camera or baby monitor would see. But through its use of optical flow, if the user so chooses, LAMPSY can actually preserve their privacy by design. Like this. This is the optical flow of a seizure. Optical flow generates about 400 movement signals, and each of these signals can contain a mixture of different sources of movement. To reduce computational demand, we employ PCA, which is a technique to reduce dimensionality. And then we employ a technique called ICA to separate statistically independent sources of movement and isolate just the seizure movement. And for this purpose, we developed a novel metric called the temporal consistency factor that's very effective at doing this. Then we employ machine learning classification to determine whether a seizure has or hasn't occurred using various seizure-specific features. Using video data from 2 of Lisbon's largest hospitals, we tested this algorithm in a study we published in Epilepsy, where it yielded sensitivity and specificity, a mean sensitivity and specificity over 99%, surpassing virtually every other device on the market today. In more recent testing, with over 2,000 hours of pre-recorded footage, we found that beyond this excellent sensitivity, LAMPSY also detected 3 times fewer false alarms than its competitors. And false alarm rate is really important. It's one of the main reasons for discontinuation of use of the alternatives. And the median false alarm rate for LAMPSY was 0, meaning most patients would not even have one false alarm during their week stay at the EMU for video EEG monitoring where this data was acquired. LAMPSY devices will be sold in a B2C model in 3 possible price tiers, with premium versions coming with bedside displays similar to a baby monitor, and thus the most affordable of which is as affordable as the most affordable seizure detection device on the market today. And this is supplemented by 3 possible subscription tiers, enabling cloud storage of videos and automated calls to more caregivers. Our team has significant experience. We've dedicated our academic and professional careers so far to the field of epilepsy, which has allowed us to develop extensive technical experience and also engage with various stakeholders. And we're lucky to count on excellent advisors with extensive entrepreneurial experience and clinical experience in 2 of the most prominent epileptologists in Portugal. We've already achieved some significant milestones. We have published research, an international patent, a fully functioning prototype and algorithm. It's here, it's been working this whole time. And collaborations with 5 Lisbon hospitals, making us ready to move forward quickly. So our road ahead is straightforward. We're seeking pre-seed funding. At this moment, we've already entered into the due diligence process with an impact investor in Portugal. And with this funding and with your help, we'll optimize this product with usability and scalability in mind, proceed with clinical validation studies in the epilepsy monitoring units we already partner with, and certify LAMPSY as a medical device by the end of 2025 and enter the market by the start of 2026. But we really need your help to scale this game-changing solution. Together, we can ensure that people with epilepsy and their families can be empowered to return to normality and regain control over their epilepsy on their own terms, without having to worry about stigma, discomfort, missed seizures, or constant false alarms. With your help, LAMPSY can stand as a beacon of hope for countless people struggling in the dark. Thank you very much.
All right, I open it up for shark questions.
I'm scared.
Can you go through the rationale of the 3 different price points and maybe what you get at the $15.99 versus the 40-some price?
So just to get a bit of background here, I think one of the biggest innovations for LAMPSY is the fact that these price points are even possible. There's a lot of methods that detect seizures using video in the state of the art. We all know video is really important. Matt Anderson was speaking about that. But none of them have actually turned into a device because video processing algorithms are really complicated. A lot of these methods are really good, but they need a powerful computer to run them. We managed to make this work fully locally on a Raspberry Pi device. It's working right now. The Raspberry Pi itself is like $30, so our COGS, or costs of goods, are really low. And so that's why we've managed to have these price ranges. The base version is just a standard version. It sends automated calls to your phone. It's much like a Nightwatch or an Empatica, an MP monitor. The $5.99 version comes with a bedside display. So like a baby monitor, this is really useful for parents that can have really active vigilance. And the $9.99 version is really important. It's a bundle of 3 devices so that they can get more devices on a discounted price to monitor more parts of their home. Because LAMPSY, unlike other devices, can actually really distinguish between normal movements and tonic-clonic seizure movements. And so therefore you can monitor your whole home, not just your bedroom. And that's the rationale. And the subscription tiers enable more storage of videos in the cloud if you want to save a lot of videos or have automated calls to more caregivers, very similar to what Empatica does.
So just one follow-on. So one would be that at $15.99 you still get 1 caregiver and you still have the same video quality as you do. And then the second one would be, have you thought about if costs are so low to price it lower?
Sorry?
Have you thought about pricing it lower so there could be more access to it?
Yeah, I have. Actually, affordability is really important to us. And so I've been debating between $2.99 and $3.99. We need to see what the CACs are, the cost of acquisition. Obviously, that's really important. We're going to try to lower as much as we can. Part of our go-to-market strategy is to really reach out to neurologists. We want to be part of the team in a sense. What's really missing in seizure detection is that most neurologists don't know about these technologies. And it needs to be a sort of a team effort to get to them. Until then, it's possible that the CACs are higher. Obviously, I don't have exact information on that. But I want to make it as affordable as possible, and that's been the goal from the start. That's why I always wanted to do a Raspberry Pi and not a computer. I don't want it to be an Apple Watch or something that is also really expensive. So we're going to try to do it as low as possible. That's also why we have the price tiers, so that we can have at least one version that's fairly cheap. Or at least as affordable as possible, and we need to naturally cooperate with foundations like Danny did, who are really, really important, because, as you know, social exclusion is way more common in epilepsy, disproportionately so. We actually did a small inquiry, only 100 people, Half of them were in our target audience, that's people in the US and Europe for the start and that have tonic-clonic seizures. And we found that 85% would buy LAMPSY, but 30% of them wouldn't be able to afford it. So this is really important. So naturally, obviously, I'm very open to that. The number of caregivers is dependent on the subscription tier, so they're not necessarily linked. You can choose any subscription tier with any device tier.
Let me break this down here because I have a real problem understanding this in terms of the value prop. So you have a $5 lamp, you have a video camera, which I can get for $5, and you have cloud storage, which, let's say the algorithm would run on there, call it $5, let's be generous, call it $20.
The algorithm runs locally.
Sure. I'm just saying that the cost to manufacture this and the algorithm can run locally, all of that still, as we buy all those local chips are cheap. So why is there such a huge margin that you're going to charge patients?
Yeah, so this is not a profit margin, right? This is the cost of goods sold is about $50 for the base version, right? The margin is there because there are costs of acquisition. So to have an even slightly viable business, we need to be able to reach out to our customers to find them.
So there are video motion detection cameras with lights, embedded in lights, available on Amazon today for $50 to $100. They are installed in big box stores today, mostly for detecting if someone is stealing something. Motion detection, great. Okay, here's a different application, seizure detection, but really it's down to motion detection. So what's different here? What's defensible?
Yeah.
Why is this price point defensible?
Exactly. So the biggest defensible point, the biggest point, the value proposition of this technology is not the hardware, it's the software, it's the algorithm. We have the most accurate, ostensibly the most accurate seizure detection method for tonic-clonic seizures. We detect 99% of them. That's 5 times fewer missed seizures than an empathic or a night watch. Because it's 94 to 95, that's five times.
So this whole hardware is a gimmick. It's really the software.
No, but you can't have software without the hardware, right? You need something that has infrared lighting, right? And you need something that can process it locally.
So a $5 webcam that you can buy on the second-hand market or Amazon has infrared lighting.
Yeah, but then you need to have the algorithm, right? You can't buy the algorithm.
Connect it to an iPad, run the algorithm.
It's
What's the price point? What's causing you to charge so many hundreds of dollars?
Yeah, the value is in the algorithm. I mean, you can't just connect it to the iPad because the algorithm is synergistically connected with the hardware, and we have the hardware, right? It's really about how few false alarms you can get, right? How accurate we can get with the algorithm that we've developed and managed to make it run here, right? And the hardware is important in a different way, right? It's
okay. Let me interrupt you. Fine, I buy it. I don't think I'm going to buy it, but fine. Just to move on. There are other companies like you. In your proposal, you've given the example of Emerald, and there are many others that are doing motion detection for various disorders, including neurological disorders, in the market today. Why are they not going to crush you like a cockroach?
I mean, you have to look at the research that's been done by a lot of people in video-based, in seizure detection in general, and they haven't reached accuracy levels like we have. So I find it very hard to believe that they would be able to get to that point, right? It's the fact that video-based detection is not only useful, but really informative. So it lets you have a lot more accuracy because you're getting a lot more information about what's happening than something else, like Emerald uses radio waves, not video. And that combined with a really good algorithm that's really accurate is hard to overcome.
Free advice you should try to sell to them. Get them to acquire you.
So I do have a question.
Thank you. That was wonderful. And are you still alive?
Yeah, it's scary. This was a proper Mr. Wonderful experience. Thank you.
That's what they're for.
I think that the other contestants are now shaking in their boots. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we're going to invite Ruben Kuzniecky from Neuroview. Big green button. And tell them when you're ready to start the clock.
Okay, thank you. You can start the clock. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. I'm an epilepsy doctor. I've been doing this for 36 years, as long as Jackie. And the most frustrating thing every day I walk into the clinic is, how you doing? I'm not sure. I don't know what the patient status is. I don't know. To tell you the truth, we don't know. And we heard today data that really patients have either more seizures than we think they are having, less seizures than they think they're having, and many of these patients don't tell you because they don't know when they're having seizures. So this is still a major problem on epilepsy care, is that we don't have a biomarker, not a serum biomarker like endocrinologists have for glucose, or the cardiologists have for a loop monitor. We don't know when patients are having seizures. And I think we've heard from the other companies that are developing similar devices that the best way to really know what's going on is having a chronic EEG monitoring device that will detect seizures. So you cannot see what's going on, you can't measure, and you cannot treat. So what we did a few years ago, we came with the concept of developing a miniaturized EEG device that you can implant on the skin. And this will be completely implantable without anything outside. It has a battery that lasts up to 3 years, and the patients will have to do nothing. The device will be there, capturing events and transmitting this data directly into the phone and from the phone to the cloud. And how we did this? We did a very large study looking at many patients that were undergoing intracranial EEG procedures at NYU. We put subgaleal electrodes on them, and we saw very clearly that we could detect seizures. So then we developed an algorithm based on this very large database of human epilepsy seizures detected in these patients. And then we developed our hardware based on that, those data. And then we move on into develop the entire ecosystem, where you can see there the device that transmits by Bluetooth directly into the phone and from the phone to the cloud. We then did a study where we implanted the device externally on patients that were also undergoing epilepsy surgery. We recorded seizures and transmitted seizures into the cloud. And eventually this past year, we did a canine study of dogs with and without epilepsy, showing that the whole ecosystem works fairly well. And as you can see on the motion here, the data goes into the phone. From the phone, it goes to the cloud, and then, of course, the interaction between all the stakeholders. Who will benefit from this? I think we heard today patients with, of course, intractable epilepsy, mostly focal epilepsy, patients that don't know when they have seizures, patients that are amnestic in general of their seizures, patients without auras. I think patients who live alone are at high risk, and therefore maybe these are patients that will benefit from this procedure. Stakeholders, of course, patients and families, because we'll know objectively how often they're having seizures. Care providers will know what they're doing, because they'll know whether the patient is having seizures or not. Pharma and biotech will be able to do trials at a much lower cost, because they'll have objective data on seizures, and payers will save a lot of money, because many procedures that we're doing now are not going to be needing to be done. We have two competitors that we are aware of. They spoke today. The main advantage of our technology is that it's fully implantable. You basically put it in and you forget about it, goes into the cloud, goes to the patient, and the patient can also mark when they have seizures. And I think that's going to be also a very important thing, that they have onboard memory detection. Even if the phone is thrown away, we can detect and memorize in the memory up to 20 seizures. So the advantage is that that data is going to reside there. This is our team of founders, neurologists, neurosurgeons. We have our business people, as well as we introduce consultants as neuroethicists. Neuroethical issues are going to bring up when we have implantable devices, and we're working very closely with a number of collaborators. This is our plan. So far, what we have achieved, we became part of the NIH Blueprint MedTech program this year, which is an important achievement. And then we have developed what I mentioned before, up to where we are. This is a Gantt chart that shows you where we are. What we are planning to do over the next year and 2 years is basically complete the device for manufacturing, and then file our IDE and finalize this probably in 12 months with our first pilot study. Thank you very much.
Questions from the sharks?
Go ahead. Thank you for that presentation. I have a couple of clinically directed questions. So the first is, it looked though, based on the images that I saw, that you have 3 contacts. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is there a plan in the trials and then going forward towards potential commercialization, a standardized approach in terms of the placement of that? Or is this meant to be directed by imaging findings or EEG? Can you please comment on that?
So we on purpose developed the device such a way that you can put it anywhere you want. Because I think you know a priori that patients may have a right hemisphere seizure, a left hemisphere seizure, temporal, occipital, so you can put your electrode where you think you're gonna get the most buck of it for the money.
Sure.
Now, in patients that have multifocal epilepsy, what we show in the study is that if you put the device, the electrode in the vertex, you are able to detect most of the seizures, of course, as well. But it's up to the physician, and of course, as you know, there's anatomical issues that you have to consider when you place the device. So we're not limited because of that.
So you don't have a prescribed protocol for that in a validation study yet? Okay. In your proposal, I noticed reference to an on-device seizure detection algorithm, and then also a reference to EMR uploads. Can you comment on that?
Seizure detection, correct. So the device has an onboard seizure detection, and it's a basic seizure detection. If it confirms that it is possibly a seizure, saves that piece of data and sends it to the cloud where you can reconfirm whether it is or not.
Okay. Is that a proprietary piece of software or something that's been used?
Yes.
Okay.
We develop ourselves, yeah.
I see.
And how does it connect to the EMR? Because anytime we want to do anything, it takes years to have them be compatible. So do you have the magic formula?
Well, that's what, you know, one of the things that we're going to develop over time, the integration with other, you know, management systems in the medical system.
We do have a question on Zoom. Can we have the Zoom questioner pop up?
So we received a question. A seizure detection device that goes under the skin sounds promising. The real question is how noticeable it is. Where is the device placed exactly?
Excellent question. So yes, so for somebody who has hair, you will not notice it, of course. It is like an RNS, a little bit smaller, so you have a bump, of course, in the head, but you usually will put this in the parietal region, so the device is also a little curved, so it, you know, it is on the skull, but of course you will be able to notice if you feel it, but if you have hair, you won't see it.
Is there any issue if the patients have neuromodulation, any other devices?
It shouldn't affect it. This is a very passive device. It's just recording.
So it won't alter the quality?
No, shouldn't.
And is this an outpatient procedure?
Outpatient procedure, our neurosurgeon thinks that any surgeon can do this in about 15 to 20 minutes with local anesthesia. I think maybe some patients will need some sedation as well, but you do it and you go home and you're done.
Thank you.
Just real quick, from a business model point of view, it would just be that you would sell on insurance-based or?
Yes, this is more also like a loop, cardiac loop monitor. So, you know, Medicare, we're basically basing it on Medicare reimbursement to do basically the same thing. There is a code for remote monitoring that physicians can charge, which is an important, you know, component of this. John, you had a question? Sorry.
How much better is the data quality compared to non-invasive solutions? I'm thinking about the risk-benefit analysis here.
Yeah, I think it's an important issue. You know, there are a lot of wearables that are going to be useful. I think the issue is, you know, how often people use wearables or for how long. This is a chronic disorder. If you look at data from wearables, the data for wearables is less than 30% of patients continue using a wearable after a year. So that's the problem. And the problem for us as physicians is that you have to have something that the patient doesn't need to be compliant with. You know, patients don't take
What about
medicine.
battery life in the device?
Sorry?
Exactly. The battery life.
So based on the current projecting is 3 years. Now, you can use this device very flexible. So you could, for example, if you want to have EEG 24 hours, you can turn it on. If you want to have EEGs only for seizures, you can turn it on that way. You want to do samples of EEG samples for sleep, you can do it every hour, every minute, anything you want to do. It's doable. because it's all embedded in the hardware.
And the 3-year battery life is based on what body of data?
So it's based, well, it's calculated based on a Bluetooth transmission data, that memory on a patient basically having 4 seizures a month.
All right, we unfortunately have to move on. Great
Thank you.
questions. Next, we're going to have Truman Pierson for Theta Neurotech. Tell them when you want them to start the clock. Okay, start.
Hi, everyone. My name is Truman Pierson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Theta Neurotech. We're using wearable EEG technology to predict epileptic seizures. As we all know, living with the unpredictable natures is extremely difficult. With 90% of all patients lacking a consistent physiological warning sign that a seizure is about to occur, 50% of patients sustain seizure-related injuries each year. And these direct costs can be traumatic and costly, not to mention the indirect cost to patients and families associated with the unpredictable nature of seizures. 80% of patients cite living in fear of the next seizure. So to combat this problem, to combat this fear, Theta is proposing that people with epilepsy will use our wearable EEG patch that continuously monitors their brain activity, and using a proprietary ML algorithm alerts them and their caretakers of an impending seizure 10 to 60 minutes before occurrence. When this device is in the market, preventive drug deployment can be taken to prevent the seizure entirely in that period prior to seizure onset. Injury or incidents can be prevented, as we saw in the previous slide. And possibly most importantly, for patients and caretakers, can have some semblance of enhanced patient independence, a restoration of dignity to the patients living with epilepsy's lifestyle. So here's how it works. The provider prescribes the device to the patient, and the device is applied at the patient's area of focus, so oftentimes behind one or both earlobes. And the device continuously streams non-invasive brain activity to a paired mobile app, where our custom machine learning algorithm classifies it as either pre-seizure or healthy. If we classify enough data as pre-seizure, the patient and caretakers are alerted via the app and can be prompted to deploy medication or get out of imminent danger. After about 14 days of use, the device is taken off, recharged wirelessly, and the sensor or the adhesive is replaced, so it can be reapplied and worn for an additional 14 days. And then periodically, the provider can review the seizure frequency that occurred via our seizure detection algorithm to make changes to treatment as the device is being worn. Now, there are 2 core pieces of technology we're developing to be able to bring this use cycle to market. The first is the custom machine learning models. We're able to use the most cutting-edge vision transformers to train models to detect and predict seizures based off of images of brain signal. So in a retrospective study using 1 or 2 EEG channels across 23 pediatric patients, we're able to achieve 97% sensitivity for seizure detection across patient when we had a single channel positioned at the area of focus. We're also able to achieve 90% sensitivity for seizure prediction when trained on patient-specific data using 2 channels behind the earlobe. On average, we were predicting seizures 20 minutes prior to onset with a false alarm rate of 0.3 per day or 1 every 3 days. In addition, we're also developing the patch. I'm actually wearing a mock-up of it behind my ear. It's about the size of a standard paperclip. In a future version, we've actually patented a version where it's soft and skin-like, so it completely contours the shape of the scalp, make it as discreet as possible. And as I mentioned, it will be reusable, so you can take it off, recharge it, replace the sensor, and reapply it, much like a continuous glucose monitor. So with that being said, here's a development and validation timeline. We'll be completing a multi-site retrospective analysis in the coming months to further validate our seizure prediction and detection algorithms, finalize the skin-like design of the patch, get some initial feedback from the FDA, complete the bench testing of the patch, and do a 510(k) submission to clear the hardware, and then follow that up with a 510(k) submission and de novo submission for the seizure detection and prediction algorithms based off of retrospective analysis. We hope to bring this product to market by January of 2026, completing these milestones. And our business model involves the provider prescribing the device to the patient, the upfront purchase of the hardware, and then a monthly subscription for the use of the device, as well as a supply of the replaceable sensors each month. The provider can then review the collected seizure frequency report and be reimbursed using remote patient monitoring CPT codes. We're glad to be collaborating with our clinical study partners, UChicago Medicine, Vanderbilt University, and Cincinnati Children's, as well as with these clinical sites for initial pilots. Thank you so much for your time. Happy to take any questions.
Just made it, okay.
So, are you able to apply this patch independently at home?
That's the goal. Potentially after the initial prescription, it'd be applied and the neurologist would provide education on how to apply it for the first cycle. But we are working on a paired device that allows the patient to apply it directly. So kind of similar to a continuous glucose monitor where it snaps into place. So that way the patient can reapply it themselves over time.
So the current model, you would need to go back into your physician's office to have it applied, is that correct?
Just for the initial application, to educate the patient on how to actually apply it, it would be applied by the neurologist. But for future cycles, it'd be applied by the patient or the caretaker.
My next question is regarding the monthly subscription fee. I want to paint a picture for you. I'm a mother that is desperate to monitor their child's seizures, but I'm also a part of the working class. I don't have the money to pay 1 month. What happens?
Yeah, so our goal is after the device is in the market, collecting data for about a year, collecting data on hospitalization and prescription drug use reduction while the device is being used. So our goal is to be able to show that insurance companies can save a bunch of money.
Do you cut the device off after the month? Would you cut it off?
I don't think so, but we haven't come into that situation yet.
That's a huge problem.
So
That's
why
a
would
huge
anyone
problem.
pay
Then why a subscription?
Why would anyone pay the subscription if you don't cut it off? What's the business model there?
So we do have to supply the sensors every month. So as I mentioned, the devices, the sensors are replaceable. So to cover our costs.
So they just don't get the subscription? They don't get the patch the following month? Is that the question? Is that how it would work?
I mean,
because, again, this creates another barrier to healthcare.
Yeah, our goal is for it to be covered by insurance as soon as possible. Yeah.
And you mentioned medication reduction?
Yes, potentially.
How?
So the goal is if we're able to, in the future, target deployment in the pre-seizure period, rather than anti-epileptic drugs being utilized every day and deployed when we predict a seizure, maybe able to reduce the amount of medication that's deployed. But that's something we'll have to study in the future.
I mean, I can understand giving rescue meds, but I don't know how it would directly lead to, reduction in medication.
Yeah, that would assume that people are using rescue meds more often in that case where reducing the amount of daily anti-epileptic drugs being used.
Can I just, you're a relatively young company. Is the algorithm patented is one question. And then the second one is you talk about retrospective studies, and yet it's patient specific. So you said you're going from a 23 to 50. So then do you work with, when you first go to the patient, you then are looking, how does it learn and then get to where, like, it would have to know sort of what causes a seizure before it could predict the next one? So
yes.
Can you go through that and how you can get that?
Go through it briefly, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the seizure prediction study, we're using a publicly available EEG data set. So on average, the patient had about 4 seizures that was recorded in that data set. So we utilized the first 3 seizures for that patient to train and tune our model to the patient's specific baseline, and then test it on the subsequent seizures. That's the number that's reported. So in the case where this device is in the market, we would need to collect 2 to 3 initial seizures to tune the model to that patient's specific baseline to achieve that level of accuracy. So that's for the prediction algorithm. For the detection algorithm, that's trained across patients without patient-specific data.
Does it detect all types of seizures or only temporal or?
Assuming we have a single channel positioned at the area of focus, so there is the assumption that needs to be positioned there. But yes, we didn't exclude any seizure types in that retrospective analysis.
So we're limited to that for now?
Sorry.
We're limited to that for now.
We're limited to the assumption that we know where the area of focus is and needs to be applied there.
I guess this is where I put my skeptic-shark hat on, because what you're describing, if I understand it correctly, and I may not understand it fully, the data elements that you're bringing to train your algorithm seem much, much less than comparative efforts that have tried to do this for decades. So could you, again, I suspect this is a long question or a long answer. But
brief answer.
Could you comment on how your algorithm achieves that power with such a small set?
Yeah, so the main difference is in the architecture of the algorithm that we're using. So all the previous work up to this point either used linear machine learning models or CNNs or computer vision models. We've utilized the newest cutting edge architecture called a vision transformer that was pre-trained on image data. So a ton of image data, millions of images, pre-trained on that data. And then we're tuning that algorithm to EEG specific data. It's already been trained on a bunch of images, so it learns computer vision, but we're tuning it to EEG specifically. So it's allowed us to reduce the amount of data we need for prediction for each patient. So that's been the key benefit of using that specific architecture.
And one last question from the audience.
Yes, so we have about 100 people on Zoom, just to give that perspective. And 4 questions have come in, but you covered the subscription question someone was asking about. But we have 2 similar questions, so I'll combine them if that's okay. What kind of sensors, modalities does this device have? And also, this is an extremely low FA rate. Most public data sets are pruned to include records with seizures, therefore decreasing FA rate. Has it been tested prospectively? Thank you.
Yeah, so for the modalities, we're measuring 2 channels of EEG signal. So we have 4 electrodes on the device acquiring 2 differential signals. And then we're also measuring movement data with an accelerometer that allows us to know the activity level of the patient to reduce motion artifact. As far as the false alarm rate question, it's all been tested retrospectively. I will say for the seizure detection and prediction models, they were trained on subsets of data. Then after it was trained, we classified all of the data that was left in the recording. So all of the interictal data was being classified. It's the most realistic setup we could get with retrospective data analysis, but we'll certainly need to continue to measure that as we test the product further.
Thank you very much. Lots for the sharks to consider. Next, I would like to bring up Karine Seymour, CEO of Avrio MedTech, AI against epilepsy, and just let us know when we should start the clock.
I'm ready, thank you.
Okay, start the clock.
Hello Sharks, hello everyone. So my name is Karine, I'm the CEO of Avrio MedTech, and we also have online Emmanuel, our clinical experts who can answer questions if I'm not able to. So our company, Avrio MedTech, has been created to bring to the patients about 10 years of academic research done in Toulouse in France on quantitative analysis of intracranial EEG. And I should... No, how do
Big
sorry,
green
yeah,
button.
sorry.
Towards there.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
So as you know, about a third of epileptic patients don't respond to drugs. For some of them, it may be possible to have surgery. However, the long-term outcome of surgery are not so great. And for those that are not eligible for surgery, currently there are still little options. So our mission is to change that situation. As part of the pre-surgical evaluation, it's often required to implant depth electrodes and do intracranial EEG to look for the seizure onset zone. So the current standard of care is to wait for the patient to have a seizure and look at where the seizure starts from. However, there are growing evidence that show that interictal events such as epileptic spikes or high-frequency oscillations and even combined markers are great biomarkers and good predictive biomarkers of the epileptogenic zone. However, they are currently underexploited because counting those spikes is very cumbersome, time-consuming, and some of those markers are not visible to the naked eye, like the fast ripples, for instance. So for that, you need tools, and that's we've developed with our solution called ELIJA. So we can detect and quantify those different biomarkers. It's AI-based and it's patented, and we can also combine those biomarkers. So this is what our solution looks like. So it's really been designed for clinicians. So on the left, you have your raw signal with the different detected events that are shown. The user, if he likes, can look at individual events, look at the metrics, and either confirm or discard the event. And then on the right, you have a topographic map highlighting the channels on which most events were detected. So where are we at now? We are at around TRL7. Our technology has been used on several studies led by the Toulouse University Hospitals and the Brain and Cognition Research Center in Toulouse. We are seeking for support from the Epilepsy Foundation for our next steps, which is to provide evidence of the clinical utility, generate our first revenues, and get FDA approval. And our solution is also being used currently in a prospective clinical trial aiming at showing the prognostic value of fast ripples for predicting the success of the therapy. This is our team. We are very proud of our team. It's composed of neuroscientists, data scientists, software engineers, biomedical engineers, and we are 3 co-founders. So in conclusion, why should you support us? We think we can really change the way intracranial EEG is done today. With our technology, it's possible to provide an immediate feedback on the placement of electrodes, reassuring the patient, the family, and all the caregivers, or potentially implant a new electrode if no epileptiform activity is detected at the beginning of the procedure. We can have better confidence in the success of the surgery. We can provide better quantitative and objective reports, and potentially we can decrease the length of hospitalization stay, since it may no longer be required to wait for the patient to have a seizure to be able to delineate the epileptogenic zone. We think our technology can also be useful to optimize parameters of new therapies such as neuromodulation and thermocoagulation. We think it's also useful to try new drugs. And finally, well, we are nice people, and we put our mission and the well-being of our employees first. So with that, I thank you, and I'm ready to face questions from the sharks.
Thank you. Sharks, who wants to go first?
I can go. Yeah. Thanks for that presentation. So I think it needs to be acknowledged that there is some controversy in the field regarding how best to interpret and then, most importantly, act upon the findings of intracranial EEG. So my question is really about a bit more detail regarding the prospective trial that you laid out, which in my opinion is the most fundamental piece moving forward. Obviously, if automated detection of these potential biomarkers don't lead to greater seizure freedom or reduction, then this is largely an academic enterprise. So could you comment a bit more on the specific plans for a prospective validation study and most specifically the clinical trial outcomes?
Sure. I don't know if I can come back. And Emmanuel, if you are online and you hear me, don't hesitate to talk about it. Oh, sorry, I went too far. Yeah. So Indeed, there's been controversy in the literature about the specificities of different biomarkers. However, there's been a study that just was published actually this week from the SHE that show that in combined spikes and ripples are very good biomarkers, and there's been several also meta-analysis. And so indeed, a biomarker by itself alone, currently, there is no specificity enough. However, combined biomarkers together are really good predictors. And indeed, you're right. Most of those studies are retrospective studies. And this is, as far as we know, the first clinical trial, prospective trial. And it is a multicentric trial. And the idea is to show that for those patients that are going to have the fast report study, the hospitals that use it are going to have better results than the hospitals that don't use it. And I didn't have time to say it, but it's using macro channels and micro wires. One of the specificities of the Toulouse group is that they do a lot of analysis on micro wires, so it's combining both. So it's quite innovative compared to what's out there. And but indeed, it will allow, once the study is done, to have a more general claim. So we'll be able to claim our tool as a prognostic tool. Right now, our claim is it should be a quantitative tool to do some quantitative analysis of biomarkers that are already there, and it's up to the neurologist to have a diagnosis with this information.
And I didn't see this detailed in the proposal that we reviewed in advance, but this appears as though you will be seeking regulatory approval concurrent with a large prospective trial. So
right.
You would only be seeking approval for a tool without clinical evidence of improved outcomes.
We claim that we have a solution to provide quantitative information on events. We don't claim to have a prognostic tool, so it's just basically making it effortless for the clinician to have access to that quantitative information.
Okay, thank you.
I have a business question here because you're the CEO. So I was looking at the user funds, and there's $40,000 out of the $200,000 you're seeking here, earmarked for marketing for a product you don't even have, let alone validated. What are you spending on marketing, and what's your expected dollar ROI on the marketing budget?
Well, we have a product, like I showed it to you. So we are starting to look for prospects.
So why is there, in the budget, there's a lot of stuff for product development?
Well, right now it's only being used at the Toulouse University Hospital, so we have feedback from them. So now we need to reach out to other key opinion leaders, and we are hoping that we'll be able to indeed generate revenues quite quickly.
So do you have a marketable product or not a marketable product today?
Do I have a marketing plan product?
Marketable product.
Marketable product. Well, it is an MVP, so I mean minimal viable product. So yes, we are.
So what's your expected ROI on the $40,000 that you're seeking here today for marketing?
We are hoping to generate our first revenues as a research use only product. So for now, and we are hoping to be able to market it for $10,000 per year for a license. And so we're now exploring that market and reaching out to neurologist level 4 hospitals and marketing that product at that price.
I agree, it's kind of odd to be already thinking of marketing whenever there's not been validation, and I would feel better, at least from the clinician side, to have had longitudinal data, prospective, and post-surgical outcomes.
Okay, so let me maybe clarify our claims. So we have had our algorithm being validated. So we validated it on a framework that's meant to compare different biomarkers. And so the quantitative information and our detectors have been validated. So again, we are providing this as a quantitative tool and there's already been proof that being able to count events would have clinical usability in numerous retrospective studies that have come out. So what we are not claiming is to be able to prognose the information. We just, it's just a quantitative tool providing information, like the neurologist will be using, MRI data, other clinical data, and that as information to do his diagnosis. We are not claiming anything more than that. And yeah.
I have an additional question. If we follow the budget, it says here in your budget that you plan to participate in AES, which is a few months away, with a booth. What are you hoping to get out of that booth participation?
Sorry, can we?
The booth at AES.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's kind of the same question of the market budget. We are looking to reach out to lead neurologists and start proposing our solution, as a research use only tool. And
that's a separate $20,000.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a
he's
separate
talking about
30,000.
AES booth.
Yeah.
That's different.
Right,
So
but I mean,
for the same purpose.
Yeah, but that's for the same purpose. I mean,
So-
it's reach out to KOLs and reach out to hospitals.
So what I'm asking is that if we look through your budget, we have a total of $70,000 invested in marketing. And I don't know that we're still clear that there's a product to market. And that would be a large investment of the $200,000 going to marketing.
Well, there is a product here. This is our
Yeah.
product here, so it is at the state where it can already be used.
So the product is the algorithm, correct?
The product is the overall viewer. It's a product that's meant to review the signal and to produce some quantitative analysis of the signal. So we do have a software that exists and is ready to be used by clinicians. And indeed, we need to reach out to those hospitals to get our first customers and be able to improve our solution based on feedback we will get.
Sorry to keep harping on this, but in the budget, there's $30,000 earmarked for developing the UX of the product.
Yeah.
Now you're saying the product and the UX is there, so what's that 30,000?
Well, we will, it's an ongoing development. We're a software developer, so we take feedback from our users and implement it as, it's ongoing development. It's never finished.
And as fascinating as this conversation is, we do need to move along, or we're going to lose a shark, which would be very painful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And finally, last but not least, we have John Terry, who is going to present on behalf of BioEP. Neuronostics is going to present BioEP. I think you must be shaking in your shoes by this point. Tell me when you want the clock to start.
I'll just get to my presentation somehow. Here we go. Okay. Afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Sharks. My name's John Terry, and it's a privilege to introduce Neuronostics to you today. Now, every year, around 500,000 Americans are suspected of having epilepsy, and the median time to diagnosis is 1 year. And in the case of some differential conditions, such as psychogenic, non-epileptic seizures, that number can be as high as 5 years. And even then, the misdiagnosis rates are startling. Studies have shown it can be as high as 30% in non-specialist settings. Why is this? Well, epilepsy is characterized by hypersynchronous bursts in the brain's electrical activity called seizures. And without observing a seizure or an electrical signature of a seizure, it can be very difficult to confirm a case of epilepsy. And for almost all people, these events occur infrequently and seemingly at random, which means that the vast majority of our preferred diagnostic test, the EEG, are inconclusive. The result? Delay, uncertainty, cost, and significant quality of life impacts for people with suspected epilepsy. Now, instead, we've developed a patented UKCA-marked digital biomarker of epilepsy called BioEP. It's a cloud-based software as a medical device. BioEP is a clinical decision support tool that interrogates apparently normal EEG and provides an objective rating of the level of support for an epilepsy diagnosis. For a clinician faced with one of the millions of clinically inconclusive EEGs collected every year, BioEP offers a valuable piece of additional information with potential applications in determining best next steps, triage, confidence in clinical decision-making. So how have we done this? Well, our research has pioneered understanding of how seizures emerge from large-scale brain networks, and we've published extensively on the topic since 2012. Effectively, we construct a computer representation of the brain network informed by short segments of apparently normal EEG. And simulations of those models under a variety of conditions rapidly reveals the ease with which seizures can emerge. And it's a combination of these seizures plus features of the brain network that inform the BioEP rating. Now, beyond its utility as a diagnostic tool, we have really exciting pilot data that shows that BioEP evaluated from an EEG prior to and post-administration of an anti-seizure medication can reveal response to treatment, which, if validated in larger studies, would be a really exciting finding. Now, our clinical traction has been accelerating rapidly. In a recent study published in Epilepsy, we found that BioEP could achieve levels of sensitivity from inconclusive first EEGs that were greater than the sensitivity achieved by clinical markers across the entire diagnostic pathway. We've just concluded our first prospective study exploring the impact of BioEP on confidence in decision-making. And in results hot off the press, we found that in a one-stop first seizure clinic, BioEP had a meaningful impact on clinical confidence in over 40% of cases. And this was both in support of a diagnosis of epilepsy, as well as in support of a differential condition. We've recently commenced a multi-site study involving 12 NHS trusts, where we're exploring a range of clinical outcomes, and we've agreed heads of terms with a private UK provider who will offer BioEP as an out-of-pocket expense to its patients. Now, we estimate there are over 3 million EEGs recorded annually in our 4 main market territories for the purpose of epilepsy diagnosis, our beachhead market. And our pricing has been carefully market tested. Health economic analysis in the UK suggests a saving of over £1,000 per person when BioEP is utilised. And an analysis of insurer rebates for CPT code 95957, digital EEG analysis, averaged over inpatient and outpatient use, came out at between $600 and $800. Beyond diagnosis, there's opportunities to create an entirely new market in prognosis, and we've had interest in pharma for using BioEP as a quantitative endpoint in studies. Now, achieving all this is only possible through the diverse and multi-award-winning team we've built, and we have expertise spanning science, technology, commercial, clinical, and regulatory. Our co-founders are both academic fellowship holders, and our commercial and technical teams have built and grown products that have sold well in other markets. Now, we want to bring the power of BioEP to benefit people in the US, and your prize will greatly accelerate our aim. We're in final discussions with the FDA to greenlight our study design, and we're building a team of clinical collaborators to help us compile the retrospective data necessary to complete the study. Post-market approval, we have a ready-made go-to-market plan, partnering with EEG service providers to deploy BioEP directly from their software. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who wants to start?
I'll start. So you talked a little bit, maybe you go back to the slide about how you get paid and who would pay and why they'd pay. So if you go through, and then you talked about this with a particular UK, so the hospital is the payer to?
In the UK or the US, sorry. So.
Maybe you could go through both.
I'm
just trying to think about, so if you get a better diagnosis.
Yeah, so in the UK, so essentially hospital systems are fairly convoluted, but ultimately the ICB, the Integrated Care Board, is the ultimate procurer of technologies. And if you demonstrate demand from clinicians and evidence of the health economic benefits, so effectively the cost saving compared to the status quo, then your technology can be procured. In the US, I think it's fair to say that our plan is less developed, but our plan would be that whilst we're waiting for FDA approval, we will begin to explore the most appropriate mechanisms to secure rebates. As I mentioned, we've had conversations with a number of EEG services providers about the ability to integrate our technology into their EEG software, and that provides a potential route to market. The reason we haven't sort of pursued this aggressively up to now, I guess, is a pragmatic one. Obviously, we hope that the study we conduct in the US produces the same results we've seen up to now, but of course, if it doesn't, then we don't want to have invested lots of time in exploring potential routes to market when they may not ultimately be available to us.
But in the UK, you feel you have a route to market.
Yeah, and I mean, we have quite strong clinical interest. Just as an example, I spoke to a hospital recently that has 600 patients on a backlist waiting for a follow-up EEG. They've had inconclusive first EEGs. At the moment, those patients would just be basically seen in the order that they were originally seen in. They're very interested in using the tool to actually reorder those patients in terms of their BioEP rating, in terms of the level of support for this individual actually having epilepsy, and looking at the impact that has.
If you could go back one slide. So the last bullet you have, number 4, says agreement with private hospital chains as an out-of-pocket expense to people suspected of having epilepsy. What do you assume that out-of-pocket expense would be? If you could give us a range.
At the moment, the conversation we've had has been around £200 per person. We'd be looking to have conversations with the insurers in the UK to actually ultimately have that as a cost that they would cover. But at this stage, because it's an early stage product, we can't actually have it directly included in the insurance. So the plan would be effectively that if an individual has the EEG and the EEG is inconclusive, it would be offered as a test that they could have done in addition, that would then inform the most appropriate next steps.
And that would be out of pocket?
That at the moment would be out of pocket in the UK. In the UK, private healthcare is obviously not a common thing. Obviously, we have the NHS that provides healthcare to all, and some people, particularly if you have insurance provided through your employer, for example, may have access to private care.
So as we translate that to the US, I understand your proof of concept in the UK. How do you see that being deployed here in the US with the out-of-pocket fee?
Well, ultimately, we'd be looking to get a rebate through insurers. As I mentioned, there is a CPT code that exists, that's digital EEG analysis, which is the one that's most similar to what we offer. Obviously, at this stage, it's not clear whether or not we would secure a rebate through that, or whether we'd have to look to a new CPT code. Those are one of the questions we'll be exploring with our partners over here in the US and firming that up, because obviously we wouldn't want it as an out-of-pocket expense, anything other than in the short initial term.
Thank you.
And quick question, from the clinical perspective, there's no actual device, it's just the algorithm you're selling.
Absolutely. So in the early stages, we spent a lot of time engaging with neurologists and neurophysiologists to ensure that the way we developed the tool meant it fitted in as closely as possible with what was happening anyway. So essentially there's one additional step, which is you have to upload an EDF file via a web-based portal to our platform. But beyond that, it's exactly the same as will be happening anyway. And for example, in this particular study, we had 100% patients enroll because actually, from their perspective, there was nothing additional to happen. They were having the EEG anyway, and their neurophysiologist
So it'd
just
be
uploaded.
long-term monitoring of any sort, ambulatory EEG?
Yeah, it works with any EEG of greater than 5 minutes duration.
And it'll tell you epilepsy, not epilepsy, or how is that graded?
Well, there are different ways of achieving this. So in the tool that we actually have as a diagnostic decision support tool, effectively it grades you on a 5-point scale, as you can see here, from very unsupportive to very supportive of a diagnosis of epilepsy. Probably worth pointing out as well, these are actual real numbers from the study that we undertook. You know, it doesn't just say everything's possible because the EEG was inconclusive, so therefore who knows, but it actually does give you a meaningful separation. Bearing in mind this was a one-stop first seizure clinic, we'd certainly expect the majority of patients to not have epilepsy. So whilst we can't directly correlate these ratings with diagnostic outcome at the moment, because that only happens down the line, this looks plausible in terms of what we might expect about ultimate diagnosis rates.
I just feel it'd be a little tricky if, you know, someone's in clinic seeing a patient and then this comes back and said, you know, you possibly have epilepsy, but it's just indeterminate and it's just adding to the confusion.
I mean, I guess you have to weigh that up against if the EEG is inconclusive, yet the case history was either strongly in support or not. That's also a challenge. I mean, one thing that's worth perhaps highlighting here as an anecdote was one case where the score came out as very supportive, yet the clinical history had not really suggested to them at that time that this was the case. They then went back into the records and actually discovered that this individual had had a couple of other seizures that had been treated at a different hospital, and because of the way the UK system works, that information hadn't made it back, and it was only after piecing all this together as a result of seeing this score, which the clinician rightly pointed out was quite unusual, as you can see from the distribution, that they looked into that.
Does your algorithm extract for each individual assessment the features that led it to come to the conclusion that it did?
So how it works essentially is it takes the EEG and it just chunks it up into segments, and it analyzes each of those segments. And then effectively it takes the median across all of the segments to decide the overall rating. And our reason for doing this is that, of course, you can have artifacts in EEG, you can have other factors. And rather than sort of saying, well, we need to make sure it's a really pure segment of EEG, which would come with a lot of additional work for the neurophysiologist or neurologist, we intentionally thought, well, let's just look and see whether median works well. And essentially, if you do have outliers, they'll fall away in the analysis.
But it's not saying, hey, I made this determination, I being the algorithm, because there was a very tiny discharge that was potentially missed by visual versus some other power spectra analysis.
So just to be clear, no, we work with background, non-seizure EEG, and this is the power of it. And if you see clinical markers, clinical features, you go with those. This is a support tool that should not supersede those clinical features.
Understood.
We have one question on Zoom, and then we are going to call it a day, so.
Yes, so there's a theme of questions going on, saying it's challenging to compare the UK and the US healthcare system. So can you address how you would bring this into the US healthcare system? Thank you.
Sure. So we've, as I mentioned, had conversations with a number of EEG services providers, and in fact with one of those we developed a proof of concept using an API-based approach, where literally you just have a button now in the system that says BioEP, and if you want as the physician to apply the analysis, you just click the button and the software does the rest. In fact, one of the really interesting things, well, not really interesting, but just as a technical feature that comes out in terms of the difference in EEG between the UK and the US, mains hum in the UK and the US is different, 50 hertz versus 60 hertz. One of the things that this trial illustrated to us was, of course, we had notch filters to remove mains hum in the UK, 48 to 52, and we were getting some funny signal coming through in our initial American signals, which we quickly realised was due to the fact that there was this mains hum at a different frequency, so we had to adapt those sorts of properties. So there are some differences actually beyond just embedding the technology, but differences in how you interpret the EEG, which are subtle, but we learned that lesson quickly and accounted for it.
Thank you so much. And what I'm going to ask now is that all of the participants in the tank leave. You'll be escorted out, and I want you to be honest about this. Your collaborators who are watching online, text them, call them, whatever, tell them to get off of line for this part, and you too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, somebody watch those guys out there. All right, we have to wait till they all filter out, make sure they're all gone. Give them a drink, keep them comfortable.
Do we get drinks too?
Would you like one? I'm sure that could be arranged.
It's 5 o'clock.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, and in fact, it's 5 o'clock here. So the first thing that I am going to do is go down the line and ask right now if you have a vote. I'm going to stand up for this. I'm going to go down the line and ask each of the sharks who they want to put their $25,000 towards. So I'm going to start with Mr. Wonderful.
Oh, I didn't like any of them. I don't have a vote yet.
Can we take ours and leave personally with
If you have a better idea, no, just kidding. Okay. Who do you want to throw it to and why?
It's for me?
Yes, it's for you, Mr. Wonderful.
Yeah, so I think a bunch of the ideas are interesting. Many of them are just ideas with serious problems on the implementation front, on the clinical side, which my colleagues have explored that know that better than me. But really on the business model side of things, there's some real issues with many of the discussions we've had. So I
Are
think-
you offering your services to them to improve their business case?
Heck no.
And I wanted to also mention that as you could see in the previous presentation by Caitlin, you have a very high standard to maintain, that the things that get money in the Shark Tank do go on to be successful products, and we don't expect it to be any different this year. And I have every faith in you that you will continue the trend.
Yeah, so I think, now that I have $25,000 in my pocket and I have to make a decision, is this the time you're asking for a vote on which one?
Yep.
Gun to my head? So my personal leaning is toward the second company that has a solution which probably can be promising, and I'm really leaning on my clinical colleagues here and seeing their enthusiasm for it, which is the implantable.
Neuroview.
The implantable device, I think there could be some issues with that too. I'm sure we'll get into that in a second, but that's kind of, for me, gun to my head, where I'm leaning.
Okay. Papa Shark?
Yeah, so Papa's actually coming up with the same. So Neuroview is the one I like best. And maybe it's the one that I think has the least holes, and maybe it's the...
You're going to have a hole in your head if you have it. I don't know if you're talking about that.
It's the winner mainly because the other ones all have gaps, like I think LAMPSY was interesting. It's very, I think he did a reasonable job of answering questions, but I think it's very niche, and I don't think durable. I think, Neuroview looked durable. It looked like they'd made a lot of progress. It seems better than the competitive product. It seems like it has a benefit. I think if I had any question with Neuroview, it would be, is how big is the benefit of, the monitoring continuously the seizure? The third one has the most upside, but it just doesn't seem to me to have enough data. It's very young. It's the...
Theta Neurotech, you mean?
Theta, yeah, Theta. And I admit the fourth one, I get confused on the technology. And the fifth one, I think it would just be hard to reimburse in the US. I think that process of bringing the UK here, so that kind of left me to Neuroview.
So,
Meg?
same one?
Can I call you Meg for short?
What was that? Oh.
Yeah, can I call you Meg for short?
Sure, Meg. Yeah, I'll be Meg for now. Yeah, no, it's really tough. A lot of them have a lot of holes, and I wish we could have had more time to ask questions, although that could take forever. I do agree that NVT seems like the most viable, and I can see the utility in chronic monitoring, and it's less invasive, subgaleal above the skull kind of thing. Honestly, I wish the intracranial assistance actually worked, because there's a lot of data to go through, and I wish that was just available, period. But if I had to pick one, I guess I'd have to go with NVT as well.
Okay.
I'm also interested in Neuroview. For all the reasons listed, again, not understanding fully the medical, but understanding that this is a device that does not require a patient to be responsible for payment, right? So again, when we talk about care for all, this is something that's easily accessible to all patients in the US, but also provides them with the assurance that they're going to get quality care based on this technology. My issue with the other products is that they were all based on patient-payer participation, which means we already are increasing disparities by just using that model.
I feel a lot of pressure now.
You're out there on your own.
Oh, I can't. I think I just changed my opinion as you guys
Oh,
were all talking.
Skepta-Shark, yes. I was like, for a minute, I had forgotten your shark name, and I didn't want to call you by anything but your shark name. But Skepta-Shark, what is your skeptical opinion?
Well, my skeptical opinion is that they all are going to have tremendous challenges on the business model front. So I think we have to grade them equally bad on that piece. But I looked at these from the perspective of how do I think the funds would be best used for the company at its current level of maturity. And I think on those metrics, I look at Neuroview and then BioEP as the two that stand out to me. I think you've already all articulated the value add of the Neuroview technology. And I just want to add an extra plug for BioEP because we all know that routine EEG study has very limited utility from a diagnostic perspective whenever it's normal. And so if there is hope for increasing that sensitivity, I think that would be a huge value add for making more efficient diagnoses and getting patients treated.
Are you saying that you're a loan shark?
I'm tempted, yes.
So
I kind of
can you
feel
convince
like
any of your other
BioEP.
sharks to go with you?
I mean,
To
it's a
swim
more
with you?
innovative play, but isn't that what we're supposed to be doing here?
So
And
wait, what's your decision?
I think BioEP.
Oh, so you initially said you had both,
Yeah.
but now you just
Well, no,
have
I-
one.
Yeah.
After thinking about it?
After
I think
thinking
you just
about
wanna
it.
be different.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Contrary shark.
Yeah. Well, I just think.
And this
the
is from
Neuroview one-
Skeptishark.
The Neuroview, they're all innovative,
Right.
but to be clear, the Neuroview technology, that approach is being used by multiple groups, and I would say that within 5 to 10 years, that is going to happen by someone. So it sounds a little cheeky, but I think it's not as innovative, and that's the reason we're probably drawn to it, is because it feels like the safer play. And I'm not saying we shouldn't support it, we should. But I think that the BioEP venture, if successful, and I'll also note that we didn't really dive into the depths of the question that I asked in terms of understanding what exact features of the EEG
They did dangle that
are
Nature
predictive.
paper.
Yeah, I didn't get that part, that's
You
why
know.
I'm-
Well, with the frustrating part, at least for me, maybe I'm alone in this, about machine learning technologies, is that you don't know how the machine arrives at its determination. It says this patient has an increased risk of having epilepsy, but what features in the EEG led it to come to that determination? A lot of times it doesn't say that. And I personally think that a big part of machine learning should be to advertise why it made that determination. Like the alpha power was different, or the theta delta balance, or whatever. There's tons of publications about this. They didn't really talk about that, but presumably they could be cajoled to produce that data in a validation trial, and I think that would support the the belief in this type of an approach. And so that's innovative. It's a bit riskier, I would argue, than the Neuroview technology. But if it was successful and we say doubled the yield of a simple routine EEG, I think that's pretty transformational.
I just want to go over the rules again, Jackie, because can I share my decision, but can I benefit both companies?
Oh. Split your 25,000? It's
Yes.
never been done. But before you do that, very innovative, very
I'm a disruptor,
innovative.
I'm a
But
disruptor.
before you do that, let's find out whether another shark has been convinced by Skeptishark to go along with
I don't want to go
Skeptishark.
all the way, but I'll go part way.
How are you so sure that some frequency's gonna help her?
I'm not. I'm Skeptishark.
Okay, yes, but
But-
you're willing
but
to
I-
throw your money.
But I do think that, I also said when I said why I'm skeptical, I'm a skeptical believer. So I do think that at some point, these types of technologies will yield fruit. And this is one where the use case is very compelling. I mean, not just in the United States, but worldwide. I mean, getting routine EEG studies into places where, there's very little diagnostic availability. A lot of those patients in those regions, they're never going to get 3 EEGs. They're obviously not going to get ambulatory EEGs or video EEG monitoring. So if you take a routine EEG study and apply an algorithm that doubles the diagnostic yield, I mean, that's a really monumental achievement.
Well, I mean, there was, what was it, Avrio or whatever, the intracranial one. What if that algorithm actually works and it improves outcomes, it's the same thing. We'll find the
Fair.
biomarker using AI, machine learning, CNNs.
Fair.
It's all like buzzwords.
That's true. That's fair.
So
That's,
that one
I
could
guess,
work, and
why
it
did
would
I
save
not?
hours and hours
Yeah,
of
why did I
reading
not
that.
react the same? I mean, I don't know what my subconscious is thinking, but I think it's just that that's a relatively niche part of what we do in neurophysiology, whereas the routine EEG is far bigger in terms of the
They
number
can
of
have more
patients.
reach.
Yeah, the impact that it has.
All right, I'm going to ask for a revote here because I know that we're about to lose one of our sharks. So,
Can I ask a question to Skeptic Shark, since you have now put us all in doubt? I want to know, okay, great, science, clinical, whatever. How do I make money? Which of them is going to make money for the two that you
I don't think any of them are. I think they all have severe business challenges, business plan challenges.
So what's the exit path for the two that you are thinking or you're less skeptical of?
Wait, I'm a shark here. Is it a shark?
I want to help you.
I don't know the answer. I mean, I don't know the answer. I'll just point out that Neuroview also will have its challenges in terms of not just reimbursement, but how all of that data is going to be reviewed. I mean, they'll be generating hours and hours and hours of data, and as someone who reads EEGs, that will be challenging. And I don't think that is going to be a tremendous profit generator. And I'll concede, I don't know that the routine EEG algorithm would either, but if they can at least have an add-on code, for instance, in the United States, that's covered by insurance because of its increased yield. I mean, the business case to an insurer, he didn't say this, but the business case to an insurer is pay more for the routine EEG because the yield is double. So that patient doesn't necessarily need to go get a second EEG, a third EEG, or maybe even an ambulatory study.
So as much as I love to listen to sharks talk, we do have a timeline here. So I'm going to have to ask for your next vote. So
Well, Jackie, you didn't have.
no,
you didn't
the
answer my
audience is going to vote at the end. Sorry. You guys vote first, and then we're going to open it up to the audience.
So I didn't get a clear answer on splitting my 25,000.
Well, I want to know whether he's like gotten a whole other shark, in which case you don't
Okay.
have to split. So let's start with that. Wasim?
I think I'm sticking to my guns.
Okay.
I'm sticking as well.
I'm next time. I don't know. I don't know.
That's a good idea.
Half, 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 and,
Yeah, half. I'll take that. 2 halves and a whole.
I mean, unless NVT you can use to chronically monitor people who are not diagnosed to see if over time they have seizures, since it's not as invasive. How about that?
Are you trying to convince me to go to Neuroview? Oh, no, I'm set now.
Yeah,
I mean, I threw my...
You can only be set.
Yeah. I mean,
No lone sharks. You have to get
Oh,
like
that's
at
true.
least
I see, you're trying
100%
to
of a
convince me
shark. I will take it if it's 2 halves to make the 100%.
I get it.
I really think that if we get you just half. What? You should just do half.
Half?
Yeah.
In this case, 2 halves do make a whole.
And then he'll be a whole.
We did 3 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do, no, you gotta say it then.
Okay. I'm in half.
Okay. All right. That's exciting. All right. So we have a final answer. We have 3 and 2. So we will hold them out there because we have one more piece to do. So everybody is logged into the app. Remember, you don't have to do what the sharks say. You have your own voice. So everybody vote your conscience. There's a shark swimming away. Stop him, stop him.
Literally swimming away with the hurricane. I'm a sharer. I don't like it. Not share. I'm a sharer. Sorry, Wasim, I like to share. That's why I couldn't. but no.
Okay, so this is where we like play some fancy music. Everybody finished voting?
But you got 3.
Play some fancy music? Or somebody who was singing last night, can you sing for us? I hear there were some great voices.
That's good.
All right. Are we ready to reveal the audience vote?
Uh-oh.
Where's it coming from?
Well, we're looking.
Yeah, exactly.
Try that again, one more time. I can't even read it from here.
It's the BioEP.
Okay. You must have been very convincing. You must have been extremely convincing over there. Give yourself a pat on your fin. All right. Will you please take that off of the screen and we'll bring, yes. So, where's my math?
125 and
So one got 125 and one got 7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I did.
So first of all, I want to say everyone's a winner. Thank you so much for your great presentations. And I think that just being here, being a finalist out of the 40 companies that applied to be finalists is a testament to the fact that you have amazing technology. And I'm sure that people here are listening, whether you're a big winner or not a big winner. But I am here to report that there are 2 big winners. I will start with Neuroview, $75,000. And BioEP, $125,000. Now, you just saw the presentation. There are huge expectations on your backs now, and you are forever tied to the Epilepsy Foundation. And next year, you're going to be coming back and telling us, just like these companies did, what you did with the money and how far you've advanced, right? So congratulations. Does someone have the big checks? No big checks? Yes, big checks? Oh, they're being written. Okay. It's not true until the check is written, so. Unfortunately, we lost a shark for the pictures because we all have to come over and hand out the check. Any remarks from our winners? Come on.
Just wanted to say thank you so much. It really means a lot. And I think with your backing and support, it gives us the best possible chance of bringing our technology into the States. And I'm really excited to work with you all and hope you'll be willing to work with us too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. No, I was telling Jackie that this is a very unusual program. There's not many like this in medicine in general, so I think this is really an important program because it really moves on technology into probably commercial. So congratulations.
Thank you. While we're waiting for the big check, so nobody go anywhere, I'm going to use this, oh, here come the big checks, just as soon as I say that.
Well, this is where I appear to be a doctor. My handwriting is terrible.
Okay, while those big checks are being signed, I'm going to take this opportunity, while we have a captive audience, to bring to the stage our two James Lintott Award winners, who are the two fellows who are considered to be the most likely to contribute to the development of new therapies in the future. And those are Christy Bauman and Elaine Sinclair. Can I have you guys come up? Let me do this first, and then we'll do the photo with the sharks. So Christy Bauman was a resident at NYU, one of our own, once upon a time, did a fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania, and is now an assistant professor at UC Davis in Northern California, where she is starting a clinical trial program. And this is extremely important because in all of Northern California, there is no opportunity for any person to enroll in a clinical trial unless they drive hundreds and hundreds of miles. So she's really in a clinical trial desert, even though it doesn't seem like it should be. And so her fervor for doing clinical trials in the future is really wonderful. And I want to read a quote from her. I enjoyed the opportunity to offer new treatments to patients with drug-resistant epilepsy and new technologies to those with refractory seizures who were not candidates for or delaying or deferring surgical intervention. Whether these interventions were successful or not on an individual level, the hope of ongoing and upcoming trials has been transformative for many of my patients and their families. So, congratulations. And here's your check. And everybody should come up and congratulate both of these remarkable people at the reception. And the second individual is Elaine Sinclair. And Elaine did her residency at Georgetown, got her PhD at Michigan State. If that wasn't enough, she got a master's at Mount Sinai and is now a fellow at NYU. She formerly was working in the lab doing basic research and somehow has come over to the light side, and now she's doing clinical research. She has 9 peer-reviewed publications. Her future interest is looking at the impact of hormones on seizures and epilepsy, and I know she's going to do great things. So. All right, and now we can pose with the big checks. Okay, which is going first?
Largest? All right, that's in dollars, not euros, right?
John?
Many have tried.
And we have one other really important task for tonight, and that is to honor our Epilepsy Foundation. Oh, we have slides. Our Epilepsy Foundation Lifetime Accelerator Award winner. So for that, I am going to invite Ed Fott. So the Lifetime Accelerator Award was established in 2012 to honor physicians, scientists, industry leaders, and others who have demonstrated a lifelong commitment to bringing new therapies to people living with epilepsy, and I can't think of anybody more deserving than Ed. Recipients are chosen by an independent committee, and that independent committee is all of the thought leaders who have brought new therapies to people and have won the award before Ed. So that is a very good group of people to pick you and to think that you were deserving of it, and obviously you are. And he is professor of neurology at Emory, and we have a couple of people who want to say a few words to you. So we will start with Lynn. Is Lynn online?
Yes, I am, Jackie, and I apologize, Ed, for not being there. Can you hear me? Jackie, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Lynn.
Okay.
The question is, Ed, can Ed hear you?
I can hear you. Yeah. Stop making fun of the aged. That was really ageism in its finest, Ed. So it's my pleasure to recognize R, which I didn't realize stood for Raymond until I got his CV, Edward Fott, as the well-deserved 2024 Accelerator Award winner. I have had the pleasure of working with Ed, or Eddie, as I like to call him, Fott for 50 years, 50, not 15. We're from the same state in the US, Alabama. Ed grew up in a small town, Jasper, Alabama, just a few miles from my hometown, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. What many people don't know about Ed is that he achieved the highest honor in Boy Scouts, that of an Eagle Scout. And I'll come back to that because Ed is the epitome of the Eagle Scout for his entire life. We worked closely together as residents at the University of Virginia in the late 70s, and Ed was my chief resident, and I'm proud to say that. I'm not sure he would agree with that, but I was a first-year resident, and he was the chief resident and then a fellow under Fritz Dreyfuss for my later years of residency. At that time, University of Virginia had a comprehensive epilepsy center and many satellite sites in the rural areas of West Virginia, Virginia, and Eastern Tennessee that provided specialty epilepsy care for patients in those regions. And a story about us that would always bring a smile to Ed's face. Fritz Dreyfuss sitting in his huge old Cadillac with his huge black bag filled with instruments, leaning to his right as if he weren't driving this huge Cadillac. And he would always have a fellow sitting in the passenger seat, which was for a while Ed, and he would have 2 or 3 residents sitting in the back seat and make a 4-hour drive while the 3 or 4 of us who weren't driving lived in terror because of his horrendous driving skills. And I remember talking to Ed about this on occasion, that it seemed like we were taking our lives in our hands on this. We would then go to a place in the mountains of West Virginia and play golf And there's a story I won't tell here as to why we played golf, but it was a tradition to the loser had to do certain things on the trip. Thank goodness we had a very poor golfer in my year, a guy named Davis Parker, a pediatric neurologist, and he was the loser frequently. Then we would go to these various sites and see 30 patients per day or so for a week. And Ed was there to steady us when he was a fellow, because it was wild in these clinics, and Ed was a steadying influence. Our group over the years consisted of many epilepsy-focused physicians, which included graduated people from our residencies, such as Jim Wilmore and Bob McDonald. Chris Sakalaris was a fellow, and he also sat in that same seat as Ed for some time, providing some humor when Fritz almost killed the group of us by poor driving. Greg Holmes, Tom Satula. There was, of course, fun experience, and we all had it. And Ed enriched that for most of us because he was steady Eddie for the younger residents. He never got flustered, even when he saw death before him in Fritz's eyes. He was always even-tempered and calming, even when troubled seas arose at the hospital or on these trips, and we all relied on him for that influence. And I'm sure that his patients did as well. Ed was a tennis lover back in those days. He still probably is a tennis lover, but he and I played frequently. Unfortunately, Ed lost these matches, but not because of lack of effort. After I entered industry some years later, I had the opportunity to work with Ed many times on many unique protocols. These included participating in the initial monotherapy designs, where he provided very valuable input and provided insights as to how we might accomplish these studies with gentle input to other somewhat more traditional thinking investigators. And actually, Jackie also was in a similar boat back in those days. She wasn't nearly as gentle, of course, as Ed. Anyone who's seen his CV realizes he has accomplished many things. He has provided service for government, people, especially in the South, where he's lived most of his life, and he's had many humanitarian awards for service. He has been involved in the development of all the drugs over the last 3+ decades, and has been a key investigator in many of these studies. He has published over 250 peer-reviewed articles, many book chapters, and books themselves. He is my friend and has been someone we could all look up to. A life in epilepsy research well lived. Thanks, Ed.
Nathan?
Thanks, Lan.
Well, it gives me an honor and a great pleasure to celebrate Dr. Ed Fott. And while I know Ed personally, count him as a friend, is our common academic family, part of which you heard about from Lynn Kramer at the University of Virginia, that really binds us. And we heard about Ed's Alabama roots and his personal formative years, and also something about your professional formative years, but really it's the insights about your professional formative years that I can really comment on in a way. We were both residents and fellows at UVA, so you heard about that long tradition, so I guess that makes us brothers in arms, but we didn't overlap in training, so I don't know if that makes us stepbrothers or cousins or something like that. And while many people train at the same institution and have sort of an academic family, we sort of feel like we have a particular unique family at UVA. You heard some of the references to that, or at least particularly a strong family, and as if nothing, a strong family man. So I think that is what helps to bind us. So after graduating from Vanderbilt Medical School, Ed was a resident at UVA and then a fellow, as you heard, finishing in 1980. And I didn't begin residency until 1989, so that's why we didn't overlap. But I am confident our common mentors, the one you heard about in particular, Dr. Dreyfus, did not change one iota in that time, particularly his driving did not change. Although we all live to tell the story, so although he'd like to read the newspaper while driving, we all survived. So Ed was at the forefront of that whole stream of fellows that you heard about that have accomplished great things in epilepsy, including others that maybe Lynn didn't mention, like Bill Sutherland, Chris Sakalaris, Greg Holmes, Tom Satula. And one thing about trainees, we're drawn to mentors or subspecialties or ideas because those who we work with. So when you say, that's someone I want to follow or I want to be like that. And really during residency, I think, is when Ed's equanimity and kindness and compassion really set a standard of conduct. We heard some of that from Lynn. That's garnered that universal respect and attracted trainees and really set a standard of care. And now it's story time. So I did ask a lot of stories to dig up some dirt, to have access to all those former fellows. But you know what? The common theme, it's not dirt. So Bill Sutherland in particular, without a moment's notice, even though I hadn't talked to him in 25 years, answered immediately and told a story of traveling to Southwest Virginia with you, sort of analogous to Lynn's, but after you got there, after the terror was over, and you arrived there. And Bill said, quote, among the patients, there was a very poor elderly woman who had a young child, her grandson, I think. The child was severely handicapped. Before he presented us with her child, she cleaned off his feet with a towel. I was so impressed by her care of her child in the face of such adversity and the way that Ed treated both her child and her to make her feel comfortable. The child also required a measured dose of liquid valproic acid to control the seizures, and Ed taught me the right amount as well. And that ended with, after almost 45 years after that story, he said, this is my most vivid memory of Ed. And I think that story of compassion is what always comes through. Although another longtime person who was an intern while you were chief was Clark Haley. Clark Haley's a stroke neurologist, a longtime faculty member at UVA, and someone I know well personally. And as soon as I mentioned the Accelerator Award, a big smile, sort of Cheshire cat smile, came across his face. And for those that know him, could really appreciate that feeling of fondness just at the mention of your name. And in particular, on this occasion, they were on service together with a patient who demanded to go home before seeing the attending. And in those days, the attending rounded sort of 3 days a week, I think, sort of Monday, Thursday, Saturday. And the patient demanded to go home, which was medically perfectly appropriate. But the attending was T.R. Johns, who was the chair of neurology, the founding chair, was someone who wasn't known for his patients and was known for his detailed micromanagement of the patients. And so when he came in, I think it was a Saturday, and the patient was discharged, steam came out of his ears, but he didn't say anything. He just, the story goes, asked to see you and Clark Haley in his office after rounds, along with the residency program director, and then proceeded to berate you like you could only do in a previous era, I think, and threatened to fire you and send you off. And even though you guys had done exactly what was medically appropriate. And Clark Haley is not someone who's known for his patients. So I can imagine that probably was almost a comical combination. But Ed sat there and sort of took it to sort of say, and I think his genuine humility impressed Clark so much that he also, after all this time, really came out with that story. And maybe that was a lifelong lesson for him, who's someone that probably doesn't learn lifelong lessons so well in that way. So in any event, Ed's commitment to equanimity and clear thinking fueled his passion to create an outstanding epilepsy center at UC Alabama. I think we're going to hear more about that, where others were inspired by this unique quality. So we could extol all the academic accomplishments that Ed had. We heard about many of them to epilepsy, but we're really here to celebrate is your lifelong commitment to helping people with epilepsy. And that goes across the whole span from, of course, direct patient care, but from medical students to residents to fellows to physicians to epileptologists to finding new drugs and therapies for epilepsy and promoting the whole community. And really with unparalleled example and expression of kindness and compassion. So I'd raise a toast to you if we were out in the lobby, but otherwise all I can say is thank you for me and everyone else.
Not done.
You want me to talk from here?
It's up to you.
Okay. So I know Ed because I worked with him for many years. He was the first chief I had. He's the one who recruited me to epilepsy. I was in Montreal, I was a fellow, and he came to the, I think it was the Epilepsy Congress, and we met there, and I invited him for some Montreal bagels to my house, which he liked, and then the rest is history. You know, we came down to Alabama. Janice and Ed were very gracious to us. Montreal and Alabama don't look the same, and it was an adjustment for us with young kids, but it was wonderful to have him help us become part of the community. One thing that I can tell you about Ed is the most humble person you can meet. I don't know if everybody knows, but Ed, beside medical school, he went to Harvard undergraduate, and he's one of the smartest guys I know, and I worked with for many years. When I came down to Alabama for my first job out of fellowship, I didn't know anything about pharmacology. He taught me everything I know about drugs and how to use them. He introduced me to drug trials, clinical trials, and research, and I think he was a very good teacher. We published over 100 papers together. We had a wonderful time at UAB in those years. We built a wonderful epilepsy center, and he was director. Then I became director when he became vice chairman of neurology. One thing that people don't know, Ed was in the military for many years, and he left twice, right, Ed? During the time, one was for Desert Storm and another time, and he spent several months working as a neurologist for the military. On a funny space, he introduced me to the Alabama towns, introduced me also to what Dr. Dreyfus used to do. He also did the same thing that Dreyfus did. He built these rural clinics, epilepsy clinics in Alabama, and we used to drive there, and eventually we split them, and we didn't play golf. We ate, and we had lunch, and then we worked all day. He did introduce me to the South and the culture. He told me, don't ask for tea. You'll get iced tea. If you want hot tea, you have to ask for hot tea. So, and the rest is history. I mean, I spent a wonderful time until 2003 when I moved to NYU, and we remain very close as friends and colleagues. Thank you, Ed, for everything you taught me.
I'm going to say that one of the great honors of my life is I once had to debate Ed on monotherapy versus polytherapy, and the name of my talk was I have to fight the great fought.
I think you won.
And
Well,
now if you want to say a couple of words.
Sure. Well, I'm just overwhelmed by this. I really am. It's wonderful, and thank you. Thank you, Lynn and Ruben and Nathan. They're one of many great colleagues I've been blessed with over the years. I really am happy to get an award from the Epilepsy Foundation. I've always believed in the Epilepsy Foundation, and I'm grateful for all of the things that the volunteers and the staff have done for my patients over the years. So there's really nothing that gives me greater pleasure than an award from the Epilepsy Foundation. I don't have time to thank a lot of people I would like to thank, including the speakers and many people in this room that I've had the pleasure to work with. There are a couple people I want to mention, maybe that aren't always mentioned. One is Gerald Finishell of Vanderbilt, who was my first neurology attending and the reason I'm a neurologist. And you heard about Fritz Dreyfuss from University of Virginia. You heard about his driving, but I have to tell you one more thing. He never wrecked that car, but I did. I drove it into a ditch one night, on an icy night on the way back from Virginia. Otherwise, that story is pretty much true. And then I've had the pleasure of working with wonderful colleagues at UAB, and then my current colleagues and former colleagues at Emory University. And it's been a pleasure to be involved with building some epilepsy centers. So that's been the great part of my career. And there's one other thing I want to say, and that is that there's someone who stood by me and encouraged me all through the ups and downs and vicissitudes of academic life, and that's my wonderful wife, Janet Jackson Falk. Thank you, Janet. And thank you all for being here, and thank you again for the award.